Chapter 8. How Suggestion Influences Health, from Peace, Power, and Plenty. Written in 1909 by Orison Swett Marden. Someone has said, "The mortalist enemy you can have is the friend who meets you and says you are not looking well today. What's the matter?" From that moment you don't feel well. Your friend has blasted your hope and spread a pall over your brain. The power of suggestion is strikingly illustrated by the fact that a hypnotic subject under control may be burned until a blister is raised by the application of a cold coin. Now, if it is possible for the thought suggested by another to produce a blister on the body, it does not seem strange that a suggestion can cause or cure dyspepsia and other ills. If it is possible to make the hypnotic subject stagger and reel like a drunken man, just by holding in his mind the suggestion that a glass of pure water he drank was whiskey, it is certainly possible to produce all sorts of effects by mental suggestion. Some examples of the marvelous power of suggestion are given by Dr. Frederick van Eden, a graduate of medicine at the University of Amsterdam and an advocate of the psychotherapeutic method of healing the sick. In speaking of Professor de Bove, of Paris, an authority in such cases, he said, "At his clinic in the hospital of St. Andrel he showed me how he could give a patient a glass of water, telling him that it was wine, and how the patient took it for wine. I saw how he told a man that a cold silver spoon was glowing hot, and how the man dropped it with every token of burning pain. How he gave another a book and said, 'Look at it, it's all white paper, all blank. Now blow on it. Look again, it's all portraits, all portraits. Now blow again, all landscapes and pictures. Look.' And the man saw everything in great amazement, and even described the landscapes and portraits which nobody saw but himself. 'Well, I never saw magic like this,' said the man. 'I'll do better,' said de Bove. 'Shut your eyes. When you open them, I have no head.' And as the man looked up he stared at the professor with a wild, scared look. 'Well,' said de Bove, 'how do you like me without my head?' And the poor man struck his own head with a violent blow and said, 'For sure, I have gone mad. I have seen an experiment tried on a horse, to make him believe he was sick. He was covered with blankets, rubbed with medicines, pitted and petted until he lost his appetite, and could not be induced to eat or drink. Another perfectly sound horse was so thoroughly convinced, in a short time, by the holding up of his foot, feeling of it, bandaging it, and rubbing it with liniment, that he was lame, that he actually limped when he attempted to walk. It is well known that the fears, the anxieties, and the worries of mothers have a great deal to do with the diseases of their children. The expectant mental attitude of nervous mothers who are always on the lookout for the enemies of their darlings tends to invite, to attract, the very things they fear. Constantly watching for symptoms of any disease that happens to be in their neighborhood, the mental pictures photographed on their brains are quickly communicated to the impressionable mind of the child and impair his bodily functions. In a home which I visited recently, the mother kept telling her little boy how ill he looked, asking him how he felt, and giving him doses of this and doses of that. At least half a dozen times during the evening she asked the different children of the family how they felt, if they had a headache or a cold. She was worried all the time about them, afraid they would get into drafts, go outdoors bareheaded, or get their feet wet. She was constantly warning them to avoid these things, and telling them that if they didn't they would get croup, or pneumonia, or something terrible would happen to them. In other words, she kept the picture of physical discord constantly in the minds of her children. The result was that some member of the family was sick most of the time. The mother said she could not go out much because there was so much sickness in her family. The father was almost as bad as the mother in worrying about the health of the family. He would call his little boy to him, feel his pulse, tell him his skin was hot, that he was feverish. He would look at his tongue and remark that he was a sick boy. The result was the boy actually thought himself sick and had to go to bed. How little parents realize the harm they do in projecting their own discordant thoughts and fears into their children's receptive minds, thus tending to develop the very thing they are trying to avoid. Think of children being brought up in such an atmosphere of fear and anxiety and disease picturing, constantly warned of danger, and cautioned all the time not to do this or that, until they begin to think there are very few things that a person can do with safety. They grow up with a terrible fear of disease that becomes a perpetual nightmare. If parents only knew what an unmitigated curse fear of disease is, they would try to drive it out of their children's minds. They never would picture symptoms of physical discord of any kind. We are just beginning to appreciate the marvelous power of suggestion to uplift or depress the mind. Only recently I heard a very intelligent woman say that she was forced to take to her bed for the greater part of a day because of the depressing influence of a magazine story she had just read. The story was written by a famous writer. It was strong, but brutal. It appealed to what was morbid in her mind and completely prostrated her. It is common for medical students to become ill through the horrible suggestions of the dissecting rooms and the depressing influence which comes from the constant study of disease conditions. On the other hand, the constant mental contact with cheerful, hopeful, health thoughts must tend to reproduce the corresponding qualities in the body. The mind of a sick person is in more or less of a helpless, subjective, negative condition, and is very susceptible to thought influences, good or bad. In health, the positive, creative mental attitude gives the mind the power of resistance, which protects it from its enemies. Most of us know what a glorious uplift and stimulus we have received when ill, from a call from one who is cheerful and optimistic, and who injects hope and courage into us. And we know how we dread to have some people call on us when we are ill, because they rob us of hope and leave us in such a dejected mood by their long faces and pessimistic minds. They always leave the depressing shadows of gloom and discouragement behind them. Sick people, like children, require a great deal of encouragement. They want hope held out to them. Imagine what an uplift it would be to a patient if his physician, nurse, relatives, and friends were all trying to radiate hope, good cheer, and courage, as will be the common custom in the future. The cheerful, optimistic physician, who is always reassuring his patients, arousing their healing energies, potencies which are in all of us, telling them how well they look, holding out hope to them, and trying to cheer them up, has a powerful influence for good. The optimism of many physicians is worth infinitely more to their patients than all the remedies they prescribe. I once knew two physicians in hospitals in Boston who illustrated this point. One was an extreme optimist with a keen sense of humor. He was always cracking jokes with the patients, cheering them up, and telling funny stories. The whole atmosphere of the wards was entirely changed after he had passed through them. His bright, cheerful face and sunny optimism gave the patients a great uplift. The other physician was morose, stern, silent, profound, a man of great learning but of few words and who seldom smiled. If he found a patient not looking quite so well as usual, he did not hesitate to tell him so, and that he was losing ground. He was conscientious and always said what he thought, even when it was cruel. The sick one, thus discouraged, would often immediately lose heart and collapse. Physicians little realize how implicitly patients pin their faith to them and how closely they watch their faces for signs of encouragement, a ray of hope. The most advanced physicians of all schools are beginning to see the uplifting force and healing power in a patient's own confidence in his recovery. Some conscientious physicians think they should always tell the patient exactly how he is, that it is his right to know, especially when in extreme danger. Now, there might be reason in this if the physician were omniscient, if he never erred in his diagnosis, if he could measure with exactitude every force acting in the man. But even the most learned physicians feel that they know comparatively little about the human mechanism. They know that patients often recover after eminent physicians in consultation have given up all hope. Why should they not give the patient the benefit of a doubt, especially when they know the power of a depressing thought or unfavorable verdict on one in an extremely weak condition? Does a physician owe his patient a greater duty than to help him all he can to recover? There is a great healing power in hope, in confidence. The influence of the strong mind of the physician on the weak, discouraged, exhausted patient is far-reaching, and he should give him as much mental uplift and hope as possible. There are times when a physician owes his patient an infinitely greater duty than to tell him the truth, or what he believes to be the truth. The power of suggestion on expectant minds is often little less than miraculous. An invalid with a disappointed ambition, who thinks he has been robbed of his chances in life, and who has suffered for years, becomes all wrought up over some new remedy which is advertised to do marvels. He is in such an expectant state of mind that he is willing to make any sacrifice to obtain the remedy, and when he gets it, he is in such a receptive mood that he responds quickly to the suggestion and thinks it is the medicine he has taken which has worked the magic. Religious history is full of examples of people who have been cured by going to famed springs, by bathing in sacred waters, or streams supposed to have great curative qualities. People who go to health resorts attribute their improvement to change of air or to the waters they drink, when, as a matter of fact, it has probably been wrought by change of environment, change of mental suggestion, as much as by the change of air or water. Buoyancy of mind, courage, hope, and cheerfulness are factors that far outweigh drugs in the cure of the sick, and should be encouraged in every possible way. The trouble with us is that we do not realize the omnipotent remedies that lie within our own minds. There is not a human ill which does not have its specific remedy, not a palliative, but an absolute cure, named in the Bible. Nothing is more strongly emphasized in the sacred book than the fact that love heals. We have suggestions of this in the balm of the mother love which soothes and cures the child's fears and all its little hurts and ills. How naturally the child runs to the mother for a kiss to heal its bruises, and into the shelter of her arms to ward off whatever it fears. If the child feels this healing power of the mother love, what shall we say of the potency of divine love, love that is selfless? The Bible assures us that perfect love casteth out fear, and fear is one of the most potent sources of discord and disease. What better remedy could be imagined for those suffering from fear, the greatest enemy of the human race, than is to be found in the study and application of the 91st Psalm? Could anything be more reassuring than the opening words of this grand psalm? He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. There is no fear, no fit of the blues, no despondency or discouragement, which this psalm, if properly studied and applied, would not cure. Think what its realization would mean to those who are in the very depths of despair. Could there be any other refuge such as that under the shadow of the Almighty? He who lives close to God, who abides in his love, fears nothing, is not worried or anxious, because he feels always the protection of omnipotent power and infinite wisdom. When we are thoroughly entrenched in the conviction of our unity with the All-Good, when we realize that we do not take on health from outside by acquiring it, but that we are health, that we do not absorb a bit of justice here and there, but that we are justice, that we do not take on truth, a little here and a little there, but that we are truth itself, principle, then we shall really begin to live. I believe that most people are conscious of a power deep in their nature which would remedy all their ills if they only knew how to get hold of it. We all feel that there is something divine in us, something in the flesh that is not of it, a power back of the flesh that will ultimately redeem us and bring us into the state of blessedness which we instinctively feel is the right of the children of the King of Kings. The great end of life is to train ourselves to find this creative, rejuvenating, life-giving force and to apply it to our everyday life.